Merci. Nous allons...
Thank you. We will continue with our work. We'll start on an item covering the intersessional joint working groups with the Animals Committee. As we have said, at each time that a group was established, when it comes to the composition of the group, we have agreed that a notification will be issued by the Secretariat at the end of the Animals Committee meeting, so that we have our final composition of the team, and the notification should also include the terms of reference of the working group. Now that terms of reference for the working group has been accepted here, and it could have some amendments, but the Animals Committee could also wish to consider the terms of reference. So we may well find that a working group that has been established during the Plants Committee here with terms of reference, but that those terms of reference may not fully suit the Animals Committee. So I would like to ask the members of the Plants Committee if we can accept that the members of the Animals Committee make amendments that suit them, but that they consult with us afterwards so that we can have a fixed terms of reference sorted. It would have been simpler if we could have worked in a joint meeting, because that would avoid this doubling up of work. So what will happen is we'll receive a notification informing us of the members of the working group and the final draft of the terms of reference. Chair, would you like the floor?
Yes, of course. I think this is a good way forward, that if we have this agreement, that then it is a consultation process between the two committees to find a way, sort of compromise, and that will then be published as a final mandate. I'm not hoping or foreseeing that we will have large discrepancies, but we never know.
Oui, effectivement, on sait jamais. Donc.
Yes, indeed, you never know. So I thank you, and I thank the members of that committee for their indulgence. So thank you very much. Now we will move to our agenda, where we will be hearing about the working groups. We have 5 reports that are ready. We will start with the report of the working group on tree species, and I'd like to ask the chair of the co-chairs of that working group to provide us with the presentation.
Donc, Monsieur le représentant.
So, if I could ask the representative for Africa, if you could please read the recommendations that emanate from your working group that you co-chaired. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to read the recommendations on the working group on African tree species. As general priorities for African tree species, the working group recommends to A, to prioritize Afzeria species for non-detrimental findings. Also, to prioritize Prunus africana and Heterocarpus erineus and other Heterocarpus species. Also, to prioritize Kaya species for aspects not affected by ongoing nomenclature work. The working group noted that the legal and illegal sandalwood trade from Africa is increasing. This calls for capacity building for appropriate monitoring technologies across different entities. Capacity building for newly listed species and sharing data across countries for NDFs is needed for species identified as of priorities. Regarding the preliminary overview of Africa tree species listed in Appendix 2, the working group notes and agrees the table with the minor amendments to be implemented by the Secretariat after the committee meetings. Also, to amend Heterocarpus species row, and that is in Annex 1, the Nigeria is subject to recommendations to suspend trade for Heterocarpus erineus, but also have to add the notification numbers on trade suspension and give more information about contributions of CITES tree species problem, specifically when ADFs were done. So those we have some editorials on the Annex 1. Regarding the recommendations on the sustainable management of Prunus africana, the main issues are monitoring, which involves the resource assessment and the trade and the governance issues. Some parts of the recommendations in Annex 2 of the document are extremely prescriptive, but the specifics may be between and within countries. Those specifics need to be determined at national or local level. The working group recommends inviting a case study on Prunus africana for the NDF workshop to discuss NDF methodologies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I thank the representative for the Africa region who co-chaired this group. You have heard the report. Are there any comments?
No.
I see none. United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate the report of the working group and the good discussion that was had during this in-session working group yesterday. We do have a couple of comments with regard to the working group's report in document PC 26-1. With regard to the second sentence in the second paragraph under the recommendations, which reads, capacity building for newly listed species and sharing data across countries for NDFs is needed for species identified as priorities. We think that it would more accurately capture the discussion of the group if that sentence was revised to read, capacity building for newly listed species, including sharing data across countries for NDFs, is needed for species identified as priorities. And this would capture the discussion around additional needs, for example, with regard to identification, legal acquisition findings, monitoring, etc. Additionally, in the same document, with regard to Heterocarpus erineus, The United States had suggested in our discussions that a regional workshop might be considered and that such a workshop could promote open dialogue amongst management and scientific authorities to share experiences, management information, and improve regional coordination with the aim to improve overall management concerning the international trade in the species. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci aux États-Unis.
I thank the USA. Do we have any other requests for the floor? The DRC, you have the floor. Madam Chair, I don't have much to add. I just wanted to add a minor correction on the membership of the working group. There's just a name that has been left out. I think, says the chair, I'm reading, after Portugal, we have the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the French version, it wasn't there, but if it has been corrected, then that's fine. You are included amongst the members. Do we have any other requests for the floor? Are the amendments that were suggested by the United States acceptable? He's in a bad mood.
États-Unis.
USA, I come back to you. Where would you like the regional workshop to be added into the document?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was with regard to the discussion when we were speaking about Pterocarpus erinaceus. And so as far as where it would be most appropriately considered, perhaps it's a new sentence, but it was a point that we had made in the discussions, and so we wanted to make sure that it was reflected in the document. There did not seem to be any objection to it in the discussions yesterday, and we thought it was an important point to recommend this regional workshop.
Donc,
Thank you. With respect to the amendment on the question of a regional workshop on Pterocarpus erinaceus, here is the proposal. A new paragraph just before the Prunus africana one. So that is what we are suggesting in the recommendations. Could I ask if those who are members of the working group would agree that it would reflect your discussions if we were to have a new paragraph between A and B in the recommendations before Prunus africana? Have you requested the floor? The chair, you have the floor.
That the recommendation by USA is correct. We discussed about the regional workshop. So maybe it was an omission during input writing. So what you are recommending or suggesting will be taken on board. Thank you.
ok. Merci.
Thank you, Chairman of the Working Group. Are there any further requests for the floor? The DRC, any updates? No? Thank you. Are we all in agreement? Thank you. The Plants Committee adopts the recommendations in document PC26 COM1 as amended by the United States. Is that good?
Bon.
Thank you. We can now move on to our consideration of PC26 Sum 2. Agar-wood producing species. This was chaired by the representative and alternate for Asia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The working group report is published in COM document PC26 COM2 with its mandate and its memberships that to be revised to the name of the chairs. So I will read the recommendations from this working group. The working group recommends that the Plans Committee agrees to, regarding paragraph B of the mandate on NDFS, include the agar-wood discussions in the context of the upcoming NDF workshop and revise the guidance in the light of workshop outcomes. B, note that available information suggests that little is known about wild agar-wood populations and inventory data, and more monitoring is needed. C, note that NDFs should be developed for specimens taken from the wild or originating from assistant protection. And D, note that further work is needed on agar-wood taxonomy as discussed in the working group on nomenclature matters. Regarding paragraph B of the mandate on agar-wood glossary, E, note that Indonesia and the United States of America have some updates and observations on agar-wood glossary, and that workshop held in Kuala Lumpur in 2022 proposed some amendments to the glossary. And F, establish an intersectional working group to revise the agar-wood glossary, taking into account relevant information, including reports available in document PC26.27 and its annexes, which should report it recommendations to PC27. Regarding paragraph 1A of the working group mandate on revisions to Resolution COM 1610 on implementation of the Convention for agar-wood producing taxa, G, consider paragraph A of the working group mandate in an intersessional working group, which should propose amendments to PC27. The intersessional working group should also consider paragraph 3B, 4, related to specimens of agar-wood contained in Resolution COM 13.7 Rev Cov 17 on control of trade in personal and household efforts. Mandate of an intersessional working group on agar-wood. The intersessional working group shall take into account document PC 26.27 and its annex and A, in accordance with paragraph B of decision 19-239, formulate recommendations regarding the agar-wood glossary, taking into account relevant information. B, in accordance with paragraph A of decision 19-239, consider potential revisions to Resolution COM 16.10 on implementation of the Convention for agar-wood producing taxa, taking into account other relevant resolutions, including Resolution COM 10.13, Rev Cov 18 on implementation of the Convention for tree species, and Resolution COM 1111, Rev Cov 18 on regulation of trade in plants as appropriate. C, additionally consider consequential recommendations with respect to paragraph 3B4 of Resolution COM 13.7, Rev Cov 17 on control of trade in personal and household effects as appropriate. And D, report its recommendations to PC27. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Before opening the floor, I'd like to ask for a clarification. On the recommendations, when you read the recommendations, you read a paragraph A that is a B in the French versions. So you're talking about the mandate. The question of the mandate, you say A, but the French says B. Regarding paragraph of the mandate on the agar-wood glossary, is it paragraph B or A?
It's B. OK. Donc, sur la version française, c'est bien le B.
So it is B. Okay. Could I ask if anyone has any comments to make on the report that has just been read out? That is to say, COM 2. No comments? The Plants Committee adopts the recommendations in PC 26 COM 2.
Okay.
Okay, let's have another look here. You made some recommendations. When we're looking at the recommendation on the Agarwood glossary, and it is recommended in paragraph F to establish an intersessional working group. So we have to establish this intersessional working group. That group's mandate appears at the end of this report. Could I ask, first of all, if we are all in agreement as to the mandate of this intersessional working group, which appears at the end of the report on page 2? Please let me know your views on the mandate of the intersessional working group that is being proposed on Agarwood. The United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we support the mandate that was outlined in the document. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. The United States, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also support the mandate of the intersessional working group as outlined in the document. Thank you.
Merci. Donc,
Thank you. We have the terms of reference established for this intersessional working group. Now we have to actually establish the group membership. The floor is open, so you can show your interest in participating. Committee members, first of all. You have the floor. Asia. Observer parties now, please. Korea, United States, Germany, Austria, Indonesia, Malaysia, Spain, the Netherlands, Thailand, China, United Kingdom, and European Union. I would now like to hear from, and Singapore as well as an observer party. Now the observers, please. UNEP WCMC, WWF, ITTO, I'm going to ask the Secretary to read out the membership list of this intersessional working group.
Okay, thank you, Chair. What I have on my list, as for the members, I have Asia. For observer parties, I have USA, Korea, Germany, Austria, Indonesia, Malaysia, Spain, Netherlands, Thailand, China, UK, EU, and Singapore. For observers, I have UNEP, WCMC, WWF, and ITTO. Thank you, Chair.
merci.
Thank you, Secretariat. The working group will be chaired by the representative for the Asia region. Thank you. We're not going to move on to PC 26Com3, nomenclature matters. This group was chaired by the nomenclature specialist, and I give her the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the members of the working group for the valuable discussions on the nomenclature topics and for their comments and suggestions that allowed us to very productively work through the large mandate of this working group and to reach consensus on a way forward on all topics under discussion. The outcomes of our agreements are reflected in document PC26-3, which includes recommendations for the Plants Committee to agree on the following. Under mandate point A, concerning the correct name of Dipteryx oleifera, following rejection of the name conservation proposal for the younger name Dipteryx panamensis by the Nomenclature Committee for Vascular Plants of the International Association of Plant Taxonomy, the rules of the International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Fungi and Plants prescribes that the older name, Dipteryx oleifera, is the correct name for this taxon. This item can be regarded as resolved and can be removed from the nomenclature work plan for the Plants Committee. Concerning the correct name for Bolnesia sarmientoi, the Plants Committee should agree to the continued use of the name Bolnesia sarmientoi pending further information. The Species Plus database should be updated to include the names Gonopterodendron sarmientoi and Plectrocarpa sarmientoi as synonyms. And the Secretariat should consult the 4 range states on the names currently used by them. And based on the feedback, an update will be provided at PC27. Concerning the correct treatment and placement of Turbinicarpus X rosaiflorus on the appendices, the Plants Committee should note that the genus Turbinicarpus is listed as a higher taxon listing under Appendix 1, and the natural hybrid should then also be included in Appendix 1. Concerning the possibility of updating the standard nomenclature reference for the bulb genus Cyclamen, the CITES bulb checklist for all 3 genera should be updated and options considered to develop separate checklists for each genus, also considering the possible use of time-stamped database extracts. And draft decisions will be presented at PC27. Concerning the problems caused by homonym names and how best to deal with them on Species Plus, using Dracaena marginata as an example, a note should be added to the CITES checklist and Species Plus database for Dracaena marginata to alert users about the homonym name relating to a non-listed species. The wording of the note should be clear to end users, and to this end, the UK will consult with its enforcement unit to try and assist in suggestions for appropriate wording. It was also suggested that elementary identification material should be developed to distinguish the 2 species, and the UK agreed to share some material that they have already developed. Concerning the possibility of producing a standard nomenclature reference for the agarwood-producing genera Aguilaria and Gyronops, the development of a checklist for Aguilaria and Gyronops should be supported, and a phylogenetic study might be ideal, but could have huge funding implications. And it was therefore agreed to get a time-stamped database extract as an immediate measure, and consider future decisions to produce an updated checklist that includes a phylogenetic study, and these will be presented at PC27. So for mandate point 1B, number 1, concerning the nomenclature for Cumarus or Dipteryx species, a time-stamped extract from the Plants of the World online database should be obtained as standard nomenclature reference. Mandate point 1B number 2, concerning the standard nomenclature for African mahoganies or Kaya species, the existing time-stamped download should be retained for the time being, while updates to the taxonomy of Kaya is ongoing, and this issue should be reviewed at PC27. Mandate point 1B number 3, concerning the standard nomenclature of rose roots, Rhodiola species, a time-stamped download from Plants of the World online should be obtained and a comparison done to ensure that species listed in COP19 Prop 45 are included, And if needed, the Plants of the World online editors should be consulted about adding any names that are not included. Mandate point 1C, concerning the Cactaceae checklist and its supplement. The following suggestions could be supported: the additions and corrections by Mexico, additional clarifications of names or taxa as proposed by the UK, and the proposed format as a fully electronic and machine-readable document. There was hesitation to include additional information as proposed by the UK, and draft decisions will be presented at PC27. So under mandate point 1D, concerning standard nomenclature for aloes, Malagasy ebonies, pachypodiums, and yews, there were recommendations made regarding the terms of reference for the development of updated standard nomenclature references for all 4 taxa. In section 2 of activity 2 of the draft terms of reference, the following should be explicitly added: authorities in the lists of scientific names and, where they are present, infraspecific taxa, natural hybrids, and species names that were previously accepted but that are now regarded as insufficiently known and unplaced. In section 3 of activity 2 of the draft terms of reference, it is recommended that the notification inviting feedback on the utility of the Dalbergia checklist, the Secretariat include instructions specifically regarding the extended checklist format used in the Dalbergia checklist. If this extended format is not supported by end users, the terms of reference should revert to a simplified checklist format and retain from section 3 only valid taxon name, synonym, common name, range state, and CITES listing status. If the more extensive scope of section 3 of activity 2 is maintained, it should be specified that only published red list assessments be included and that the source of the trade data, if included, should be explicitly cited. For all updated checklists, it is recommended to also have the species lists in a machine-readable format that can be imported into databases in addition to the PDF format. Further, under mandate point 1D, the following taxon-specific recommendations were made. Mandate point 1D number 1, concerning the nomenclature of aloes. It should be noted that the information in paragraph 5 of Annex 3 to PC26 document 43.2 needs to be checked for correctness by the nomenclature specialist. Mandate point 1D number 2, concerning the nomenclature of Malagasy ebonies, Diospyros species. The scope of the standard reference should include the 88 large tree species of potential commercial value identified from Madagascar. In line with COP decisions, a full checklist rather than a time-stamped database extract should be produced. Since all species except one are endemic to Madagascar, the section on range states can be limited from section 3 of activity 2 of the terms of reference, and a note included for the single species that also occurs on the Comoro Islands. Mandate point 1D number 3, concerning the nomenclature of pachypodiums. The World Flora Online Taxonomic Expert Network for the family Apocynaceae should be contacted to find guidance on who could lead the development of this checklist. Mandate point 1D number 4, concerning the nomenclature of yews, taxus species. It should be ensured that the checklist encompasses the entire genus, even though only some species are CITES listed, while bearing in mind that the number of listed species may increase due to taxonomic changes. China voiced its continued commitment to collaborate on the checklist. The World Flora Online Taxonomic Expert Network for conifers should be considered a suitable contact to be involved in this work, also bearing in mind that the references contained in Annex 2 of document PC26, Doc 43.9, need to be taken into consideration following Decision 19.290. Madam Chair, based on the careful deliberations and agreements of the working group, I extend an invitation to the Plans Committee to adopt the recommendations contained in report PC26-3. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la...
I would like to thank the nomenclature specialist for that presentation. Committee members, you have the floor. Observer parties, you have the floor on COM 3. The United Kingdom, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the nomenclature specialist for preparing this report. The UK has some small comments on the section on the discussion about an AGOWA checklist, which is in section 1A for document 43.1, part 18C. The development of a standard nomenclature reference for Aquilarian gyronops should not include atoxylon, as it is not a CITES listed species. We discussed in the group that research on atoxylon wood is being undertaken at the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew, but we did not intend it to be included in the proposed new checklist. We also discussed using a timestamp database from the Plants of the World Online for Aquilarian gyronops, which is not captured in this document. Thank you.
Je donne la parole.
Thank you. The nomenclature specialist has the floor. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the UK for pointing that out. I think that was a misunderstanding on my part. So I would be happy to strike out the text of the first non-underlined sentence of that recommendation. So I'll read the first sentence. Support the development of a checklist for Aguilaria and Gyronops. And then strike out from the comma, also including other non-listed agar wood producing taxa mentioned in reports recently submitted in relation to agar wood, opening bracket, e.g. itoxylon, close bracket. So from the comma to the closing bracket, we can delete that text. And then the next sentence remains, and then from therefore, a timestamp database extract, and I can include there from the Plants of the World Online and continue as an immediate measure, if that would be acceptable to the UK and other members of the working group. I think that will solve that problem. Thank you.
Merci.
I would like to thank the nomenclature specialist for that. Would anyone else like to take the floor on COM 3?
Madame la spécialiste, le secrétariat...
Madam, the Secretariat has a question for you on what you have just amended following the comment made by the United Kingdom.
Thank you. It is on page 2 of the document, the third last recommendation for document 43.1, paragraph 18C, concerning the possibility of producing a standard nomenclature reference for the agar wood producing genera Aquilaria and Gyronops. So the first sentence, support the development of a checklist for Aquilaria and Gyronops will remain. And then from the comma, we strike out also including other non-listed agarwood-producing taxa mentioned in reports recently submitted in relation to agarwood, opening bracket, e.g. itoxylon, close bracket. So from the comma to the closing bracket, we can strike those text out. The next sentence, a phylogenetic study might be ideal, but could have huge funding implications, will remain the same. And then in the next sentence is where the insert will come. Therefore, get a time-stamped data extract, and then the insert is from the Plants of the World online, and the sentence will continue as normal after that. Is that clear?
Okay. Merci, Madame la spécialiste.
I thank the nomenclature specialist. Is that right? Is that okay, Secretariat? Good. I see no further request for the floor.
Donc, le comité pour...
So the Plants Committee adopts the recommendations contained in document PC 26-3 as amended.
Maintenant, nous passons au document.
We shall now move on to PC 26-4. It is the working group on products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids, which was chaired by the representative for Europe, Ms. Smith. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This document outlines the membership, mandate and recommendations of the working group on products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids, Orchidaceae species. The mandate of the working group, which was an in-session working group, was to review document PC 26.30 and its annexes, and B, in accordance with decision 19.247, draft some recommendations on how to improve CITES compliance for Appendix 2 listed orchids for the Plants Committee to consider and to submit to the Standing Committee or the Conference of Parties as appropriate, and report its recommendations here to the Committee. There were 3 recommendations to the Plants Committee. The working group recommended to A, develop identification manuals, as all tuberous orchids are currently listed in the appendices, and the main challenge was to distinguish tubers as a group from other specimens in trade. B, address needs for additional support for ongoing red list assessments for tuberous orchids. And C, understand the regional differences in trade of tuberous orchids and how they translate into actions to strengthen CITES compliance, considering in particular any livelihood elements of this trade. With regard to the recommendations to the Standing Committee from the working group, there were 5 recommendations. Little A, first recommendation, to emphasize the need for identification manuals and training for this group. B, to urge parties and other donors to support red list assessments for tuberous orchid taxa in international trade. C, to urge parties to regulate the trade in tuberous orchids as is currently required under the Convention. D, to request the Secretary to issue a notification to the parties inviting them to provide information on Little Roman I, trade volumes, 2, manuals and regulations relating to trade in tuberous orchids, including domestic trade, 3, enforcement challenges, and 4, other relevant information related to trade in tuberous orchids, including any capacity building needs. And finally, to consider the study on edible orchids in document PC30 and respond to the notification to prioritize issues relating to trade in tuberous orchids to be addressed, and to propose recommendations to COP20, including any draft decisions as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Merci à la présidente.
I thank the chair of this working group. We have heard the report. Do we have any comments?
Okay. Alors, Je donne Norvège.
I give the floor to Norway, to be followed by the USA.
I would like to note a minor omission among the members. The alternate for Europe, Mr. De Boer, was also a member.
Merci.
Thank you. USA, you requested the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the chair of the working group for giving the report and to the working group members for a good discussion. In considering the recommendations to the standing committee, just for clarity's sake, we have a minor amendment to paragraph E, which is at the very last element of the report. And that is to consider the study on edible orchids and responses to the notification to prioritize issues relating to, so there's a to missing, or it could be relating to or regarding trade in tuberous orchids. But we think that clarification is needed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci, États-Unis.
I thank the United States.
Merci. Je m'adresse à...
Thank you. Representative of Norway, would you like to be mentioned as alternate member or in your national capacity?
Thank you for asking the question. As alternate member.
Merci. Donc,
Thank you. So I shall have that added. Thank you. So the Plants Committee adopts the recommendations that are in document PC 26-4 as amended.
nous passons maintenant à la lecture du rapport du groupe de travail sur...
We will now go to reading the report of the Working Group on Trade in Medicinal and Aromatic Plant Species, and I give the floor to the chair, the representative for Europe, Ms. Moser.
I would like to thank the members of the working group for their very fruitful discussion, and also thank to the North American region who proposed some substantial amendments we added as Annex 1 and 2 to the working group report. The recommendations of the working group to the Plants Committee are regarding paragraph A of the mandate, comments on the terms of reference, little a, clarify the timescale of the analysis for activity 2, little b, clarify the languages of the analysis for activity 3, then little c, select a subset of medicinal plants for activities 3 and 4, such as those in demand, those endangered, those in compliance processes, or other criteria. And little d, consider additional comments contained in Annex 1 to the present working group report. Regarding paragraph B of the mandate, options for the MPNS database, little e proposed to implement option B in paragraph A of addendum PC 2026-34 addendum, and little f requests the Secretariat to consider concerns voiced by parties regarding a disclaimer to be published alongside the reference to the Medicinal Plant Names Service MPNS database. Regarding paragraph C of the mandate, it's the choice of a revision or a new resolution. Little g, note that the resolution on traditional medicines is on traditional medicines, but medicinal and aromatic plants materials are treated in quite different products like cosmetics, pharmaceutic products, aromatic products, and so on. Then little h, note that there is preference for a new resolution to be developed in an intersessional working group. So regarding paragraph D on a mandate, an establishment of an intersessional working group, little I, establish an intersessional working group with the mandate to A, in accordance with decision 19.263, paragraph B, take into consideration the information in document PC 25.30 and its addendum, information document COP 18 in 11, and document PC 26.34, AC 32.41, and other relevant information. I consider paragraph 6 of document PC 26.34, AC 32.41, the comments on those contained in the Annex 2 of the present working group report and any report of the Secretariat as per decision 19.261 that may become available to further inform the review. I, draft a new resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant products, and 4, reports its findings to the Plants Committee. Regarding paragraph E of the mandate, submit the draft of the new resolution or draft decisions for the consideration of COP20 to continue this work during the next intersessional cycle as needed to the Standing Committee. Chair, with this, I recommend the Plants Committee to accept the recommendations made by the working group. Thank you, Chair.
Merci.
I thank you, Chair of the working group. So I now call for any comments from the plenary. The floor is open. I do not see any request for the floor. And before we set up the intersessional working group, I'd like to hear your comments. North America? Oh merde.
Y a-t-il d'autres retours? Non. C'est bon, on va repartir.
We can start again. We'll now set up the working group, the intersessional working group, and the terms of reference are presented in document PC 26Com5. It is in subparagraph I. Do we have comments on the terms of reference? I do not see any request for the floor. The mandate is therefore accepted. So now we will proceed to the membership of this working group. So I open the floor for members of the committee to express their interest in participating in this group. Europe, Asia, North America. Now I will give the floor to parties. United Kingdom, Canada, Indonesia, Austria, Thailand, Germany, India, European Union, Russian Federation, Korea, US, China. Now I will open to observers. IUCN, WWF, UNEP, Traffic. Could you please give your name? Thank you. Singapore. Secretariat, could you please read us the membership list for this intersessional working group?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have noted down as members the representatives or alternates of Europe, Asia, and NAR, North American region. And as parties, I have UK, Canada, Indonesia, Austria, Thailand, Germany, India, European Union, Russia, Korea, USA, China, and Singapore. And as observers, I have IUCN, WWF, I have UNEP, but I'm unsure whether that's UNEP WCMC, I didn't see it. Okay, yeah. And I have Traffic and American Helper Products Association.
Merci, Secretariat.
I thank the Secretariat for reading the list of members for this working group, and I note that there are no countries from the Africa region in this working group for medicinal and aromatic plant species trade. It would be good to have representatives from the region. Thank you. Togo. Thank you. Madagascar, Zimbabwe, Malaysia. Thank you. So the working group, this intersessional working group, has been established, and it will be chaired by Europe. Thank you. The Plants Committee adopts the recommendations contained in document PC 26Com5.
Oui, avec les modifications.
With the amendments.
Donc, nous revenons sur...
So now we'll come back to the reviewing of the summary documents, the executive summaries. PC 26, Sum 1. I think the amendments that were made this morning have not received any objections. So the Plants Committee adopts document PC 26, Sum 1 as amended.
Nous passons maintenant au résumé de séance PC 26 2 et donc nous en étions aux discussions notamment concernant le point 18. Nous avons fait retrouvé ce que j'avais annoncé à pardon.
We found once more what I had.
Royaume-Uni.
Sorry, Chair, we lost translation for a moment there, and I just wanted to check if that was something.
Can you hear the English channel? Thank you. I apologize if it went off. Sorry.
Je peux continuer ou il faut que je revienne?
Would you like me to go back over what I've said, says the chair?
Donc, je disais que nous en étions au résumé.
I was saying that we were on our executive summary, PC 26, Sum 2. And we were on item 18 there. And we went back to find exactly what I said in the conclusions of this item. Could the Secretariat read this?
Merci, Madame la...
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we just go to the YouTube channel for the Secretariat and we look at the French version, since it was set in French by the Chair, and at 147, the conclusions, word for word. We have heard the members of the committee as well as observer parties. The Plants Committee takes note of the concerns raised by document PC 26.18 prepared by the European Union and agrees to invite the Secretariat to issue a notification in order to transmit all feedback to the European Union. Thank you.
Merci, Secrétariat. Donc,
Thank you, Secretariat. So those were my exact words, and which were agreed and are reflected in this executive summary of our decisions. So I hope that is sufficiently clear. Now, are there any further comments on any other items in this document? Please identify yourself. I'm afraid I cannot see from here.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm EPC France Europe. I just wanted to ask, if I may, we participated in the working group on neotropical wood species. That was yesterday morning at 8 a.m. And we cannot find our organization named in the document on reporting on that working group. Thank you.
Lors de la composition.
When the membership was set up, did you indicate your interest? Yes. Yes. So if that is the case, we will we will make sure we include your name. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Y a-t-il des commentaires spécifiques?
Do we have any specific comments on the document PC 26 Sum 2?
Je ne vois pas.
I see no request for the floor. So the Plants Committee adopts the document PC 26 Sum 2. And as modified, as amended. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick confirmation that the other amendments to this summary record were also accepted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
États-Unis?
US, the Secretariat confirms that your amendments have been taken into account. I'm afraid I forgot to notify that. So, the Plants Committee adopts document 26 Sum 2 as amended. Thank you.
France, vous avez la parole.
France, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not want to complicate overly this discussion, but I have a question at the conclusions we've arrived at. We saw this morning that there was a difference between the French and English versions. I had suggested or proposed drafting to amend the French version so it would be aligned with the English one. But given what has been said, I wonder if we shouldn't maybe change in the English version the first line of item 18, which says in English,
on document PC 26 Doc 18, et je me demande s'il ne faudrait.
And I wonder if we shouldn't write raised in document PC 26 Doc 18.
Je m'en remets à vous et au.
So at the hands, your hands and those of the many Anglophones in the room. So I shall let the English speakers come up with the best option. Canada.
Thank you, Chair. It's our understanding that in the discussion and indeed in the intervention that was read by Hélène, quoted in French, that we were talking about concerns about the content of the document, not the concerns that were held within the document. And so for us in English, on is better, or if we wanted to be more precise, it could be regarding, but in would not be appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
À la France, donc regarding.
Okay, so let me see what France thinks about regarding rather than in, because we're talking about concerns with respect to the content of the document. Concerns were raised. What about Spanish speakers? Are you satisfied with the version that you have? You have the floor.
Je vous ai donné la parole, allez-y, vous pouvez y aller.
You have the floor, please do go ahead. I'm so sorry. I thought you were pointing elsewhere in the room. Thank you, Madam. We have heard the Secretariat read to us what the recording said, and that said that it seemed to me that seemed entirely in keeping with what we would like to see. It is different, however, from the French that we have in our document. So I would suggest that the French that was as it was read earlier, rather than prendre note, it's avoir écouté, not note, but heard the report of the European Union. I guess the original version was the French one, and therefore the English version should be amended so that it is faithful to the original French version of what you said, Madam. Thank you.
En tout cas,
well, the official version was certainly the French one. That we can all agree on.
Non, c'est la traduction.
Okay, now we have to decide how we're going to translate what was said in French into English. I do think that Canada's proposal might be useful regarding. That's what was meant. Now, what about the Spanish version? Could I ask if the Spanish version is actually a good version of what was said in French? Could I ask a Spanish speaker to help us out here? Thank you, Madam. We certainly agree with the version that we have in Spanish in our text. Thank you. Thank you. So what I would propose is that we keep the original French as recorded, we keep the English proposal, and the Spanish speakers are happy with what they have, and then we will have a faithful record of the meeting. France, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam. In the French version, I read, the committee takes note of concerns raised in the document. So it does seem concerns raised by the document. These are concerns raised by the document. The French version says that, and the Spanish says the concerns raised on the document rather than in the document. So I would now like to turn to my Spanish-speaking colleagues. So I don't think that these texts are actually in alignment. Canada, please. And to be followed by Colombia.
Perhaps I could provide a bit more context to our comment. So I believe what occurred is that the executive summary was perhaps written in English, although your comments were provided in French, and then translated incorrectly into French. So it is our understanding that when you refer to the French version as being correct, you are referring specifically to the words that you, Chair, used to summarize our conversation, and that Hélène thankfully read out for us earlier. So Canada is in agreement with the words that Hélène read out, evidently, as they were the words written in our discussion. But those are not what is currently reflected in the executive summary that is written in French. So in our view, the English translation is more or less correct. It could be more precise with the word regarding to replace in, and that the French translation currently needs to be corrected to reflect the actual outcome that you provided in the meeting, and the Spanish translation should also reflect the outcome that you provided in the meeting. So in that sense, we believe that all of the executive summaries require a bit of tweaking, but we understand that that will happen to reflect the French conclusion that was provided by yourself during the meeting and read out by Hélène at the beginning of this discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, Canada.
Thank you, Canada. Colombia, you have the floor. Thank you, Madam. I simply wish to say what colleagues said. The Spanish version does seem to tie in with the French version, and the French version says concerns raised. The French version seems to say in, and the Spanish version seems to imply concerns raised by parties on the document. So there is a disjunction between the French and the Spanish versions that we have. These prepositions seem to matter, so concerns raised in or concerns raised on are two very different things, and the Spanish version does not say what the French version said. So I think that we do agree that we need to ensure that the official documents are all in alignment so that they properly reflect the result of the Plans Committee work.
Merci pour votre intervention.
Thank you, sir.
Donc,
so,
Colombie, vous voulez reprendre la parole?
Colombia, did you wish to take the floor again? We have a proposal to make. Sorry, just to speak in your language so you fully understand, says the speaker. The Spanish version says sobre, which means on or in with regard to. With respect to. Sobre in Spanish. So there is a clash between the two languages, and it does seem to us that the official languages should be in synchronicity. Yes, sir, I had indeed understood what was being said. Thank you to the interpreters, says the chair. So what we are going to do is go back to the original version, what I said in French. That is going to be our starting point. And then we are going to look at the English and Spanish translations. So, Hélène, could I invite you to say exactly what I said? Say it in French. The Plants Committee takes note of the concerns raised by the document PC 26.18 prepared by the European Union and agrees to invite the Secretariat to publish a notification in order to transmit it to the European Union for their response.
Okay. Maintenant,
now, who would like to give us another language version of this?
ok. Alors, secrétariat en espagnol.
Secretariat, could we hear from you in Spanish on this?
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that the sum record in Spanish is correct because it says el comité toma nota de las.
The committee takes note of the concerns raised sobre. And that seems to me to reflect what you said in French. What word did you use? For soulevé par, sobre, which would be on. Thank you. France. Thank you, Madam. I think we're all getting a little bit confused here. It's Thursday, and I think it might be a good idea to simply postpone our adoption of this document until tomorrow so that we can sleep on it. I think a little group might want to get together. There seem to be some continuing differences, and it would be a bad idea to end up with clashing versions of our executive summaries.
C'est la difficulté parfois.
Well, maybe it's a problem with French using passive rather than active modes. I think if all this had been in active mode, there wouldn't have been the problem, and the translation would not have been so complicated. I think we are going to do what has just been suggested. We're going to put this to one side for now and sleep on it. And we'll see whether it's with respect to, with regard to, and in any case, we don't have much choice in the matter because we're going to have to come to a decision tomorrow. So let's do that.
Sur ce,
That said, the meeting stands adjourned. See you tomorrow. The chair kindly thanks the interpreters and does take note that for once we're not finishing late.